Life often feels heavy not because of what we are carrying physically, but because of the weight we allow to build up in our minds. And clearing out your mind is one of the most important disciplines you can practice if you want to live with peace, clarity, and purpose. When your thoughts are cluttered with worry, comparison, guilt, or the endless replay of yesterday's mistakes, it becomes almost impossible to see what is in front of you, or to hear the quiet voice inside that is trying to guide you forward. See, and this is why so many people live exhausted even when they are not doing much. Because mental clutter drains more energy than physical work ever could. And the truth is that a cluttered mind does not just keep you distracted, it keeps you defeated. Since every doubt, every fear, every unresolved thought acts like a chain tying you to a place you no longer want to be. So the work of clearing your mind is not optional if you want to grow, it is essential. The process begins with awareness, becoming intentional about what thoughts you allow to live rent-free in your mind. Because just like your home, your inner space cannot hold everything. And if you keep piling up unnecessary things, you will soon have no room left for the things that truly matter. So you must be honest to notice which thoughts lift you and which ones limit you. Which ones point you to your values and which ones only replay the lies of fear. And once you identify them, you have to start replacing the noise with purpose. Meaning you must consciously fill your mind with what aligns with who you want to become, whether through reflection, journaling, prayer, meditation, or even surrounding yourself with voices and environments that build instead of break. Because clearing out your mind is not about leaving it empty. It is about choosing what belongs there. When you begin this practice, you realize that most of what kept you anxious was never as powerful as you imagined, that many of the battles you were fighting were only shadows created by repetitive negative thinking. And when those shadows fade, the light of the light, clarity allows you to see possibilities you could not see before. Creativity begins to flow, decisions become sharper, and your resilience grows stronger. For a mind that is clear is not easily shaken by every wave of life. It remains anchored, purpose. This is why discipline matters, because your mind left unchecked will always drift toward the loudest distraction, and only through renewal can you pull it back to peace and focus. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes to live from a place of clarity instead of chaos. To respond with wisdom instead of reaction, and to move with confidence instead of hesitation. And in that state, you will find that you are not only more productive, but also more present, more grateful, more alive. Because when the clutter is gone, what remains is the strength to live intentionally. The freedom to breathe deeply, and the vision to step boldly into the future prepared for you. Many times the struggle in life is not about the circumstances around you, but the weight of what you are carrying inside your mind. Because when thoughts of fear, regret, guilt, comparison, and unprocessed emotions build, they create a storm that clouds your vision and weakens your ability to move forward. Clearing out your mind is not an easy practice, but it is a necessary one if you desire peace and direction, because a cluttered mind works like a crowded room where every voice is shouting at the same time, leaving you no space to hear what truly matters. And if you are not intentional about managing those voices, they will dictate your decisions, drain your energy, and hold you back from the opportunities that are right in front of you. So you must learn to pause and recognize what is occupying your mental space, because not every thought deserves your attention, not every worry belongs in your future, and not every memory. The practice of renewal is not a one-time action, but a daily discipline, because the world is filled with noise and distractions that compete for your attention. And if you do not train your mind to return to clarity, the clutter will always find its way back. Renewal can happen through reflection, through journaling, through silence, through prayer, or through meditation. But the purpose is the same: to wash away what does not belong and to make space for what gives life. And this is not about escaping reality, but about equipping yourself to face it with strength. Because when your mind is heavy with doubt, you cannot recognize opportunity. But when your mind is clear, you see doors that were always there, waiting to be opened. And in that clarity, creativity flows more naturally. Focus sharpens and confidence rises. This discipline may feel difficult in the beginning because your thoughts are used to running in every direction, but over time, as you consistently redirect them toward what aligns with your purpose, you will create a new pattern of thinking that strengthens resilience. And you discover that the mind, like a muscle, grows stronger the more you train it. And soon what once felt impossible becomes natural. You no longer react to every negative thought. You no longer drown in every storm and in every storm. But you stand steady with a calmness that comes from within. Living from a place of mental clarity changes not only how you see yourself, but also how you show up in the world. Because a clear mind gives you the power to respond with wisdom instead of impulse, to live with purpose instead of distraction, and to step into your future without the weight of yesterday pulling you back. When the clutter is gone, gratitude finds its place, joy becomes easier to access, and peace becomes more than a momentary feeling. It becomes a way of life, and this affects everything around you. Your relationships grow healthier because you are no longer projecting your inner chaos on others. Your productivity increases because your energy is no longer wasted on useless cycles of thought. And your spirit feels stronger because you are no longer living in the prison of your own doubts. In this state, you begin to realize that clarity is not a luxury, but a necessity. Because without it, life feels confusing and heavy, but with it, life feels purposeful and light. And the difference between living defeated and living empowered is often the difference between a cluttered mind and a renewed one. So clearing out your mind is not just about feeling better in the moment. It is about building a foundation strong enough to carry you through storms, to anchor you in truth, and to release you into the life you were always meant to live. The heaviest burdens we carry are often the ones no one can see, because they live inside our minds where unspoken fears, regrets, comparisons, and constant doubts build up until they shape the way we see life and limit the way we move forward. And this is why so many people find themselves exhausted before the day even begins, because their energy is being drained not by their work, but by the endless cycle of mental clutter that refuses to let them rest. Clearing out your mind is about creating room for peace, clarity, and direction. And it begins with recognizing the weight of what you allow to stay inside. Because if you do not stop and take inventory of your thoughts, your mind becomes like a house filled with broken furniture, blocking every path and leaving no space for what truly matters. And the truth is that until you identify what is toxic and release it, you will keep walking in circles, wondering why progress feels impossible. So the first step is always awareness. The courage to acknowledge what is weighing you down and the willingness to make space for something better. Once you begin that process, you discover how many of your struggles were never truly external, but internal, built on the stories you told yourself over and over again. And those stories become chains that feel real until you decide to challenge them. The practice of clearing your mind requires discipline because thoughts do not always leave quietly. They try to come back louder than before. But when you train yourself to replace them with truth, with hope, and with purpose, you begin to see how freedom is not about controlling everything around you, but about mastering what goes on inside you. And that mastery creates resilience, focus, and strength. Whether you practice it through prayer, reflection, journaling, meditation, or even silence, the aim is the same: to take what is heavy, examine it honestly, and then release it so that your mind becomes a space where clarity and creativity can thrive. Because when your mind is clear, you begin to notice possibilities that were invisible in the fog, and decisions that once felt impossible suddenly become manageable. The transformation does not happen overnight, but with consistency, your thinking begins to change, and the patterns that once controlled you lose their power, because the mind, like a muscle, grows stronger when it is trained. The more you practice renewal, the less reactive you become to negativity and distraction, and the more intentional you become about focusing on what matters most. And this shift influences not just how you feel inside, but how you live outside. Because when your thoughts are no longer pulling you in 100 directions, your actions become more aligned, your relationships grow healthier, and your productivity increases. People often underestimate how much of their potential is being blocked by mental clutter. But when it is cleared, you step into a version of yourself that is confident, calm, and capable of handling challenges with wisdom instead of panic. And this inner clarity becomes the anchor that holds you steady, no matter how strong the storm. Living with a clear mind allows you to experience life in a deeper, more meaningful way, because you are no longer consumed by the noise of doubt or the weight of regret, but are present enough to enjoy the beauty of each moment, grateful enough to see blessings where others see nothing, and courageous enough to step into opportunities that once felt too overwhelming. This kind of clarity is not just about feeling lighter in the present. It is about building a foundation for the future. Because a cluttered mind leads to confusion and hesitation, but a renewed mind leads to purpose and progress. And the choice to clear your mind daily becomes the difference between living as a prisoner to your thoughts and living as a person of vision. In this state, you are not controlled by what has happened to you, or by what could happen tomorrow, but you are grounded in the strength of who you are becoming, and that strength carries you into a life of focus, peace, and resilience where you can finally move freely toward the destiny prepared for you. The battles that drain us the most are not always the visible ones in our circumstances, but the invisible ones taking place inside our minds, because the weight of unprocessed fears, doubts, regrets, and comparisons can feel heavier than any responsibility we carry on the outside. And when these thoughts pile up, they create mental clutter that robs us of peace and direction, making it difficult to hear what truly matters or see the opportunities right in front of us. Clearing out your mind is not just a suggestion for a better life. It is a necessity for anyone who wants to live with clarity and focus. And this process begins with recognizing how full your inner space has become, because just like a room crammed with useless objects blocks your movement, a mind filled with unnecessary noise blocks your growth. So the first step is becoming aware of what is living rent-free in your head, and admitting that not every thought deserves to stay, not every memory should be replayed, and not every worry is worth your energy. When you begin to take that step of awareness, you realize that many of the struggles you thought were coming from outside were actually magnified by the clutter inside. Because the stories you tell yourself can either limit you or release you. And too often people repeat the same negative narratives until they feel like truth. Breaking this cycle requires courage to confront those thoughts, identify which ones are toxic, and replace them with intentional beliefs that build instead of break. Because clearing your mind is not about emptying it into nothingness, but about filling it with purpose, hope, and direction. And this renewal can happen in different ways: through journaling, through prayer, through reflection, or even through quiet moments where you separate yourself from the noise long enough to reset. But whatever the method, the goal is to release what drains you and create space for what strengthens you. And when that happens, you begin to notice how much lighter life feels when you are not carrying the unnecessary weight of mental clutter. The discipline of renewal is not easy, because thoughts rarely surrender without a fight, and the same doubts and distractions will try to come back louder than before. But when you consistently redirect your mind toward clarity, you begin to train it the way you would train a muscle. And over time, it grows stronger and more resilient. At first, the practice may feel difficult because your mind is used to running in every direction. But the more you guide it back, the more natural it becomes. And soon you find that you are no longer reacting to every negative thought or drowning in every wave of worry. But instead, you are standing steady with confidence and calmness. This growth does not just remain inside, it spills into every area of life, shaping how you show up in relationships, how you make decisions, and how you pursue opportunities. Because a clear mind allows you to focus fully on what matters instead of being pulled apart by distractions. The effects of a renewed mind are visible in the way you live and the energy you carry, because when the clutter is removed, your relationships benefit as you no longer project your inner chaos on others. Your productivity improves because your focus is no longer divided. And your emotional health stabilizes because you are no longer weighed down by cycles of negative thinking. Clarity brings peace, and peace brings strength, and this strength equips you to handle life's storms with wisdom instead of panic, confidence instead of fear, and purpose instead of confusion. People often underestimate how much potential is being blocked by mental clutter. But when it is cleared, a new version of yourself emerges. One that is free, focused, and capable of stepping into challenges with resilience and vision. Because the quality of your thoughts determines the quality of your life. And when your mind is clear, your path becomes clearer too. Living with a clear mind is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself, because it transforms not just the way you think, but the way you live, allowing you to experience each day with gratitude instead of regret, with courage instead of hesitation, and with focus instead of distraction. This discipline is not about perfection, but about progress, choosing daily to release what does not serve you and to embrace what strengthens you. And as you practice it consistently, you begin to see how clarity is not a luxury, but a foundation. Because a cluttered mind leads to confusion and hesitation, while a renewed mind leads to confidence and direction. In this state of clarity, you are no longer a prisoner to the noise of doubt, but a person of vision guided by purpose, anchored in peace, and equipped to step boldly into the life you were created to live. And that transformation begins the moment you decide to clear out your mind and make space for the future waiting for you. The heaviest weight a person often carries is not the responsibility of work, family, or circumstance, but the silent load that sits inside the mind. Because thoughts of regret, fear, guilt, and comparison have a way of piling up until they become louder than truth and heavier than reality itself. And this mental clutter is what leaves so many people feeling restless and weary, even when they have done little, because the battle in the mind consumes more energy than any physical task ever could. Clearing out your mind is not about running away from life, but about creating room for peace, focus, and purpose. And it begins with awareness, the courage to admit that not every thought deserves space, not every memory deserves repetition, and not every fear deserves power. Because until you face what is truly crowding your mind, you will remain stuck in cycles that rob you of clarity and peace. When awareness enters, the process of renewal begins, and you start to notice how many of your struggles were not external battles, but internal narratives. Because the stories you rehearse inside your head eventually shape the reality you live outside. Oh no. And too often those stories are filled with negativity that limits instead of lifts. Confronting this truth is not easy, because thoughts are persistent and patterns are deeply rooted. But when you decide to challenge them, to name them for what they are, and to refuse to give them control, you make yourself the first real step toward freedom, because clearing your mind is not about leaving it empty, but about filling it intentionally with what aligns, with growth, hope, and direction. And whether you do this through prayer, meditation, journaling, or silence, the purpose is the same: to replace the noise of distraction with the voice of purpose so that clarity can guide your steps. The discipline required in this practice is ongoing, because mental clutter does not leave once and for all, but tries to return with every new challenge or disappointment. And this is why consistency matters, because the more often you practice renewal, the stronger your ability becomes to resist the pull of doubt and fear. Training the mind is like training a muscle, requiring repetition and patience, but over time you will notice the difference. Decisions feel clearer, confidence grows steadier, and storms that once overwhelmed you now pass without shaking your foundation. And instead of being reactive to every negative thought, You become proactive in shaping what deserves to remain. And this shift is not only empowering, but life-changing, because it proves that peace is not found in the absence of problems, but in the clarity of mind with which you face them. As your mind becomes clearer, you also begin to notice the ripple effects it has on your external life. Because relationships benefit when you are not projecting inner chaos onto others. Productivity increases when your focus is no longer divided by worry. And health improves when stress is no longer fueled by cycles of negative thinking. Peace within produces strength without, and the people around you feel the difference when you show up with calmness instead of confusion, focus instead of distraction, and joy instead of heaviness. And this is why the discipline of clearing your mind is not selfish but necessary, because it does not only affect you, it shapes the way you interact with the world and the way the world experiences you. And the stronger your clarity, the stronger your impact. Living with a clear mind transforms not just your inner life, but also the way you view the future. Because where once you saw obstacles, you now see opportunities. Where once you felt trapped, you now feel free. And where once hesitation ruled, now boldness takes its place. Gratitude becomes easier, hope becomes stronger, and purpose becomes clearer, because the fog that once blocked your vision is lifted, and you can finally see what has been waiting for you all along. And this transformation reminds you that clarity is not a luxury, but a foundation. Because without it, you stumble through confusion, but with it, you move forward with direction. And the difference between the two often lies in the choice to clear the clutter from your mind. The power of a renewed mind is the power of a renewed life. Because when your thoughts align with peace and purpose, your actions follow, and you begin to live not as a prisoner of doubt, but as a person of vision. Not as someone weighed down by yesterday, but as someone anchored in the possibilities of today. This choice will not always be easy, but it will always be worth it. Because each day you clear your mind, you choose to step closer to the life you were created to live. A life marked by clarity, strength, and resilience. And when storms come, and they always do, you will face them differently, not with panic, but with wisdom, not with fear, but with focus. Because your inner space has been prepared, and that preparation becomes your greatest weapon, your greatest strength, and your greatest gift to yourself and to the world around you.